virus like COVID-19 would come and without differentiating, it will alter the lifestyle of the people across the globe. Now, due to this virus, many changes came to our world and it took some time for everyone to adopt the new normal. I'm quite impressed by the studies and the work by Dr. Carol Dweck, who works on growth mindset. And she says, challenge is the core of growth mindset. Without it, we don't get the opportunities to take risks, learn to fail, and figure out how to pick ourselves up again. And this sense of progress, as Dweck calls it, is central to developing growth mindsets. So, friends, she also believes that challenge should become the new comfort zone. We'll see how today Dr. Shetty's topic is going to throw light on the topic of mind in the crucible, fresh learnings. And we all can today relate to the minds being in the crucible for what we all have seen and gone through in the last close to 2 years of time. So let me formally introduce today's speaker, Dr. Harish Shetty, to all of you. Sir is a veteran psychiatrist working with the governing body member as a governing body member of the National Testing Agency. Sir has an extensive experience in the field of mental health, especially in connection with disasters. He has worked at Latur in 1992-93 for a year, at Kandla after the cyclone for a year, evaluated the psychosocial processes at Jabalpur and Gujarat after the earthquake for a human rights group, and also worked at Gujarat after the last riots for 6 months. This was on the invitation of Amritaben Patel, the then head of NDDB. Dr. Shetty has worked extensively with the youth and works with an educational institution every week. He has also provided mental health intervention to seafarers after their release from the clutches of Somalian pirates. He is a governing body member of NTA appointed by the Government of India. I extend my warmest and heartiest welcome to Dr. Shetty on behalf of all the participants here today and on behalf of the entire family of Ramratna International School. Sir, kindly take over. We look forward to learning a lot from you today. Ready for the fresh learnings.
Congratulations, dear teachers, and congratulations for all the good work you have done across time. It has been very difficult. You've had the school inside your home, you had an office inside your home, you had a restaurant inside your home, and you had a playground also for your own children inside them. Not easy at all. My best wishes for those who have had COVID and have recovered. May you recover completely. Though there are many who are long haulers and still feel very weak, tired, exhausted, because COVID affects everybody very differently. My sincere condolences to all those who have lost their friends, family, neighbors, acquaintances. And as of today, when I look at the Crucible, it's a place which melts metals. And this is basically a metaphor for the presentation today. Let me tell you, this is not going to be a prescriptive presentation. Do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. This is more like a Dhoom 1 movie, which has different frames. It is inferential, it is indirect, it may be direct at different places. But I believe all you teachers are doing great work. I'm not going to add any new wisdom, but I'm going to reflect what I have seen across time in my life, in my work, and in the last 2 years. Well, this is a very famous sentence which I've been saying all the time. Lock minds are time bombs, diffuse it early, lest it explodes inside you. And this is my famous sentence across 40 years. Never waste a crisis. Winston Churchill said that in World War II. Also, what is very important is I realized that in a crisis, there is accelerated learning provided you are aware, provided you are in a reasonable state of equanimity, provided you believe that the human race can overcome and not be overwhelmed by crises around it, very metaphorically and very realistic. Having said this,
Excuse me, sir. Miss Dhanashri, please keep yourself on mute.
having said this, I am asking you all a question. Can we jump across the development level a little higher because of the crisis? What happened in Latur was everybody got new homes as compared to the old homes which were made of stones. In an SRA program in slums, everybody gets a new house. In a disaster, everybody gets money as compensation. But so many of the homes at Latur are not occupied. So many of the SRA homes are not occupied at all. And the compensation money given to them is misused. And all this happens because the mind is not paired along with giving. Giving has to be paired with healing. When giving is paired with healing, living becomes very beautiful. So this is a challenge. Can we pole vault ourselves as Sergi Bupka long ago and jump one development level up after the disaster using disaster as the pole vault bar? And that is the challenge for all of us. Well, certain basics. This pandemic is different than all other disasters for 6 reasons. When I worked at Latur, everybody said they're against God because the earthquake occurred on the day of Ananta Chaturdashi, the last day of the immersion of the Ganesh statue. When I worked in Cyclone, they said it's all God's wish. It was fatalism which came up as the coping mechanism. When I went to Jabalpur, they said, Sarkar ka karega saab, sab Bhagwan ke hath mein. It's all about God. But this time, this disaster is about science. Which means what? Which means there is a virus. There is a virus which actually has infected a lot of us. And because the people of science told the Maulavis, the priests, the sadhus, and other religious people to close down all the religious structures. It is a disaster of science. That is one of the most important learning and difference between this disaster and the disasters. Well, every disaster has a pre-impact phase, an impact phase, an immediate post-impact phase, and a post-impact phase. Many may not have a pre-impact phase. Well, before the riots, there were rumblings in 93. That was the pre-impact phase. Before the earthquake at Latur, there were small tremors across 1 year, and that was a pre-impact phase. Sometimes you may not have a pre-impact phase. You may just have an impact phase. But whatever it is, in the earthquake, the impact phase lasts for a few seconds. In a cyclone, it might last for a few hours. In a flood, it might last for a few days. But here, the impact phase across 17 months, 18 months, relentlessly, the virus is attacking mankind. And the worst part is, it is invisible. So remember, you have an enemy in your area who's murdering everybody and is invisible. So imagine the mental health impact. The next difference is huge numbers. 4 lakh plus died in the country. 1 lakh plus died only in our state of Maharashtra. And that also is a very important aspect. Next is isolation. Isolation would mean your relative or your loved one is in the hospital. You can't go to see him. You can't go to feed him. You can't go to escort him to the loo. You can't look into his eyes and say he'll be all right. You can't kiss him and cheer him up. And he or she is isolated far away. So this is one of the most important differences. And this is also very vital when you understand the mental health complications. And the last is, well, many in India sold the mask in black, sold medicines in black, manufactured fake medicines, manufactured fake vaccines, and caused a lot of hesitancy, COVID vaccine hesitancy. So many people talked about the vaccine in so many different ways and said that this is not the right vaccine. And thousands followed them. They did not take the vaccine, and many died because of them. And this is, I would call them COVID terrorists. Now let's look at the background. What did we inherit just before the pandemic? Well, Government of India, Ministry of Health, and ICMR came up with the study. They found 1 in 7 in India mental ill, which means in your extended family, one person is mental ill. This was in 2019 December. The NCRB in 2019 came up with their figures. 1 out of 3 reasons for self-harm and suicide was due to family crisis. And 1 out of 4 people who died of suicide or self-harm means the same were daily wage laborers. Understand the impact. We are going to talk to children, we are going to talk to parents, and there is distress in 1 out of 3 families where there could be self-harm. So family problems is a very important issue. And the second implication is poor patients, the poor are more affected by the changes happening in the country. And mental health is not only about feelings, it's also about food. What are the other changes happening around? Rapid social change across the country. Globalization, well, globalization is happening big time. The CEO or a security guard works for 12 to 14 hours a day. My parents, I would see them at least after 5:36. My children do not see me before 10 o'clock. There is a growing assertion of identity. People say that we won our independence in 1947, but the second war of independence is happening now. A host of political upheavals, and this is the context in which we are. Well, going back to what ICMR, what NCRB said, as I said, 1/3 of people who end their lives by suicide, family problems, and 1/5 or 1/6 of them who end their lives by suicide have illnesses. And 1 out of 4 people who end their life by suicide are daily wage earners. So look at this combination, poor and family issues. And one more slide I did not show you is lower the education, higher is the chance of ending your life by self-harm. These are some of the contexts. Let me share some data. Well, a brilliant study of the DNA of 26 groups across the world. They were looked for epidemics in the past. China started 20,000 years ago and lasted till 5,000 years ago. 42 genes in 5 groups mutated due to the virus. Mutations are protective for the virus.
Excuse me, sir. Just wanted to check with you. Are you presenting the screen? Because we can't see the
Yes.
presentation going. No,
Oh
sir.
my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Since when?
Right from the beginning. It was stuck on the first image. Now we can
Cannot?
see it changing, sir.
Now you can see?
Yeah,
We can
now
see
we
you're
are
on
on
13th slide.
43.
So
Slide
you're
Pardon me,
on
43.
one sec, one sec, one sec, one sec. One sec, one sec, one sec, one sec, one sec. Uh, one sec, huh? One sec. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Give me a minute, give me 10 seconds. The slides have not changed. How is that? The
So
slides.
just click F5. The
One sec,
slideshow would begin.
one sec, one sec, one sec, one sec. Wait, wait. It didn't change from first. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Can you see the slide changing?
It is on 13 at the moment.
No, no. It is.
It's on 13.
I can see 13th slide pollution.
Okay, one second.
Yes, it's moving. It's now the fifth slide, pandemic and other disasters.
Okay, okay. Okay. If it stops moving, just inform me.
Right.
Now
We'll do that.
is it moving?
Still at 5. Yes, sir. Now it came to 13.
Uh-huh.
Back to pollution. Yes, we can see the transition happening.
This student, this I think it's not happening in the big. Do This if it's
Okay, okay.
possible.
Okay. Sorry. Now you can see the first slide,
Right, sir. We can see it.
and now you can see the second slide.
G. We can.
Okay, okay. So again, I said Winston Churchill. I also said that we should use the pole wall to really jump up into the development level and see that use the disaster as a peg to jump up. And I said that pandemic and other disasters are so different. I spoke about fatalism, long impact phase, huge numbers, isolation, invisibility of the virus, and about COVID terrorists. And I spoke to you about the background before the pandemic. 1 out of 7 mentally ill, 20 crore ill in India. And I also spoke about 1 out of 3 self-harm deaths due to family crisis and 1 out of 4 self-harm deaths due to daily wage laborers. I spoke about the rapid social change, globalization, assertion of identity, and political upheavals. And I showed you the slide, and you may not have seen 1/3 of people who pass who really end their lives is because of family problems. 1/5 or 1/6 are because of illnesses. 1/4 is because of daily wage laborers. And here I said that mental health is not only about feelings; it's also about food. And now you can see this DNA of 26 groups studied for corona epidemics in the past. They found that 20,000 years ago, there was COVID, which lasted till 5,000 years. 42 genes in 5 groups mutated due to the virus, and mutations were protective for the virus. The mutations transferred to the next generations also. Coronavirus existed since 20,000 years, and modern coronavirus is 820 years old. What is the implication of this? If nature helps our genes to mutate, to protect ourselves from the virus in the future generations, behavioral mutation can be voluntarily carried out by teachers and leaders across time. And that is the message from what the DNA mutations happen because of the virus for thousands of years. Pollution went down. Well, this is again a very interesting study and has a lot of implications. The implication is that during a disaster, if we foster good adaptation to stress, which means in our classrooms, in our interactions, live or online, or in our families, or among our friends and neighbors, if we are able to adapt our life to stress, it will help the person move across adulthood and make him or her stronger to actually face future disasters. So that this disaster is an opportunity to do something different, to move away from the facts of science, to help them build their adaptive skills to face the stress. It is actually an opportunity and also a chance for all of us to change and help young boys and girls to adapt. Remember, before the age of 10 and 12, all the skills which the kids would absorb basically becomes impressions, and these impressions can be carried across life, and it will be passed across different generations. And that's a beautiful study which I see. Again, the positive impact. Well, financial inclusion, 80 crore Indians got free ration, and a lot of positive stops across the world by governments. Greater investment will come in hospitals. Use of technology is something we all know. And disaster preparedness, which means we'll not be caught with points down in a future pandemic. And that is something very important. Aversion to unnecessary travel. People who travel and boast about it in parties, in meetings. I'm flying today here, I'm flying today there. Last 7 days, 5 days, I was out of my country, etc. And these are the things which really happened. In 2020, the suicide rates in Bombay came down by 14% despite the lockdown. What is the message we have got? The message is when there is social cohesion, social connectedness, social support, the mental health improves. And what is very important to understand that this can be also fostered later in our interventions. Another study which is very important is loneliness has been found to be inversely proportional to wisdom. And that means that people who have stood in their homes without moving, people who refuse to move, people who have been quarantined in a place, people who have been in hospital for a very long time with Star Wars type dresses with doctors. And what happens here? What happens here is extremely important to understand that being alone, being stoic, being strong, and not being able to connect or share your feelings, etc., will lead to uh, wisdom going down. So more the connectedness, higher the wisdom. There's a beautiful research by Dr. Dilip Jeste, Indian psychiatrist who works in the United States of America. Is a great researcher doing a lot of research on wisdom. So loneliness is inversely proportional to wisdom, and that is something which also is very important for us to understand. Which means what? Which means in our classrooms, do we help children to connect? Do we help parents to connect? When Mumbai is opening to a very great extent, I see joy hesitancy, just like vaccine hesitancy. A lot of my friends are not taking the vaccine, and I really found out when I gave them a call, and I'm forcing everybody to do that. But joy hesitancy is also very important, which means things are opening up. You can meet in small groups safely without any fear. And because of being held inside the house, because of the figures which have really scared us, we are very scared, very skeptical to actually move out and start enjoying in a limited manner little joys, small joys. And that also is extremely important for us to understand that loneliness across the disaster can cause joy hesitancy, which is also very important. Now, what happened because of globalization? Globalization causes disconnection. We don't meet people across time. Even before the disaster, 30 years ago, funerals would have a lot of people. And now we do not know who died in a neighborhood, nothing to do with COVID. And it just comes as a notice, and we pass that information with a sigh and nothing more. This is one of the most important metaphors of globalization, and that is disconnection, which is worse than HIV, which is worse than COVID. So we have inherited a state where we are actually disconnected, and over that we had COVID. So what is the implication here? Implication is we need to work in education institutions, families, workplaces, and preschools. Going back to 2005 years ago, 2500 years ago, somebody said, I cannot do this. And that's what many teachers said. I cannot do online teaching. Many children said, I cannot do online learning. And so a lot of children also said, I cannot do this because I don't have access to online learning. I don't have three phones in the house for three children. I have only one phone, which my father has to use, my mother has to use, and we all three have to use. So this is again a very important implication. I'm going to come to this in 10 seconds. So what is important? Well, in Mahabharata, the conversation between Arjun and Sri Krishna was something very interesting. But Sri Krishna had to really goad Arjun to fight the war as his dharma. So that was a linear issue. Mahabharata was not linear. It had gray. It's not black and white. Also had a lot of gray. But largely for the ordinary man, it is good against evil. But here, as a teacher, remember, this disaster, very few people know what it is. The human race could decode the virus in 1 week and could bring a vaccine in 1 year. But what is so important is when people do not know what is happening, the CDC in America spoke about actually discarding masks and again changed. Anthony Fauci, one of the foremost virologists of the world, has kept on going up and down, to and fro, and he did not know what to say, and he was not able to grapple with this entire pandemic. So when the pandemic is too complex, too big, the answers are always simple. The answers need not come only from teachers. And the implication of Arjuna's confusion is that this disaster is different, unlike the Kurukshetra war. Teachers, if they keep their ears, eyes, and their antennas open, they would actually listen to wisdom of children who might give coping skills to teachers, to themselves, and to families, because simple minds are very profound. Also, there is something known as vulnerability. Yes, losing jobs, salary cuts, losing human beings in your family, having infections, make us all vulnerable. And when leaders and teachers, principals, leaders and teachers, share their vulnerability across their children, across their employees, across students, it is one of the most powerful attitudes which we all need to learn from the pandemic. No, we do not have to show that we are made of steel. We do not have to show that we have armaments around us and we can protect ourselves emotionally and physically across time, and we will tell you what to do. No, it will not work. When you're vulnerable, there could be helpless vulnerability or empowered vulnerability. Helpless vulnerability would mean, oh my God, my children are not paying fees. I do not how I'll run the school. Empowered vulnerability is, well, there's a problem. There are issues in fees, there are issues with my children, but let's come together and find a way. And that's empowered vulnerability. And this can only succeed if the conversation is bi-directional. It cannot happen if it's unidirectional. And bi-directional would mean keep our antennas open for surprises from young children, from surprises from ordinary people, and learning can happen in a multi-directional way. Well, there's one issue which came up to me, and when people lost their jobs or their family members, there were many stoic people in the family saying, I'm the pillar of the family, I'll take care of you. And this gentleman refused to acknowledge these feelings around him, refused to acknowledge the fact that he also needs as much support as others, and refused to understand that a school or a building cannot stand on one pillar. There are small pillars, big pillars, medium pillars. And what is again very important is in this multi-directional conversation, small pillars might give a unique thought, a tectonic intervention to the big pillar. So being plural, being very democratic, and believing that each one of us can assist each other. And when the pillars interact, there can be a revolution. But when the only pillar believes in interacting with all of the pillars, there is no revolution at all, and you'll find somebody thinking for others. So believe that multi-directional conversation would mean a lot of pillars. And as I said, simplest minds are the most profound. There are enough examples across the earth that adversity leads to a revolution. Well, these are the sentences which I've been hearing across my lifetime, in families, in disasters. I still remember this beautiful story. After a year of the Latur earthquake, the most senior IAS officer told me, Dr. Shetty, we have built all the homes, but mental health is something which will get healed automatically. You know, Dr. Shetty, in our Sanskriti, time is the best healer. I said, no, sir. If the fan on your head falls on your head and you start bleeding, will you wait on the dais and say that let me bleed, time will stop the bleeding? Not true at all. Time is not always the best healer, is something which is very important for you to understand. Now, as realization comes that we need to use the pole vault, that opportunity of the disaster, to raise ourselves to a different development level. As we believe that never waste a disaster, never waste a crisis, and according to me, is a time of accelerated learning, there are stories which can also inspire us. Yogendra Yadav story in the Kargil war is something which is so beautiful. Why I'm sharing these stories is not, maybe it may not inspire you, but there could be other stories that inspire you. Resilience and raising the morale of the people around you also needs stories, and stories echo at different parts and at different levels of a mind, which means I might be inspired by Yogendra Singh Yadav, who won the Tiger Hill for us at the age of 19. Remember the age of 19. And his story was that he and his friend, another Yadav, would always fight with each other. Always would actually fight with it. But he loved challenges and he rose to the challenge, and he was martyred, and because he rushed and demolished the army at that point of time. At the age of 19, Yogendra Singh Yadav. At the age of 15, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. These are inspirations. But maybe you could be inspired by other stories. So what is also very important for a teacher, not only to teach geography, history, science and mathematics. Every teacher is a storyteller, and at this point of time in a disaster, 50% of the time should be used for the curriculum, 50% of the time should be used for inspiration, healing, getting together, bringing children together, getting them connected to their families, and seeing to it that they remain above the ground, and also listening to them for wisdom. This is one story I felt I can share, but you could have many others. And let me tell you, my dear friends, the man who has inspired me in my life to a very great extent is Baba Saheb Ambedkar. And this Satyagraha Chaudhar Tale, that is the lake where a section of Indians were not allowed to drink water or even get water from the lake. And Baba Saheb Ambedkar's history, his life history, is a must for all teachers to read. Why? Because if you look at somebody who has moved from one level to a different level, and across time, in spite of all what happened, he struggled. And struggle is always probably one of the most satisfying events in our lives. Struggles are positive, it is joyous. Only if you believe that you are struggling for a great cause, only if you believe that your struggle is for people's good. And let me tell you, my dear friend, my dear teachers, to be inspired to work in a disaster, you need to be inspired by stories and the people. It may not be the people whom I am inspired, it could be different people. But the point is, getting yourself awakened to the stories and to the people at this point of time is more important than any other time. Also, I still remember when I say crisis causes accelerated learning, I still have memories of the earthquake. I still remember in a village, a large number of women would not come out and talk. The men would come in and speak, and nobody knew what to do. The collector, the IAS officer, the sarpanch did not know what to do. When a woman, not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, started Haldi Kumkum and went across the homes, the women hugged her and started crying. That's how grief actually started. When somebody told me that he has thrown all the gods into the sea because he was very angry with the fact that his father died and he and his wife has been alive. And when I said that basically the earthquake happened because the earthquake homes were not earthquake resistant, they were built in a very different manner. And they said that is the cause of the disaster and not anybody else, not God. And when we sat down and discussed this across time, a lot of people felt it was true. Once we were actually having a meeting in a village, and as we had this sabha, grama sabha, as we actually called it, somebody started cracking a joke. One of the people who were there were at least 300 people. They were cracking a joke, and I, for the first time, learned that in pain also humor can coexist. And they were cracking jokes, and we were very worried that is it the right thing to laugh along with them. And I learned for the first time, not only here, but when I've conducted sessions with students in hostels, etc., in spite of grief and pain, humor can coexist. And what is very important is I learned that humor should be initiated by people who have been affected, and probably you can be a catalyst, but you need to see that you are sensitive to the humor. It has to be sensitive to the occasion. At Kandla, when we were actually working, we went to the village and said, we need to have a Manaswastha Shibir or something like that. They said, get out of this place. And they said, we are not mad. You don't have to do anything like this. And then we again sat down there and we found that they had a satsang every week. And then we said, we want to have a satsang. We learned that we need to locate mental health with the culture and the idioms which are used in the village. So actually, disaster, you keep your eyes open. And if you believe that you are Sergi Bupka, who's going to use the disaster to raise the development level of your population higher, then it will really work. My dear friends, as I've said, stories, real life stories, where you are involved or where others were involved. To me, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, from the age of 15, I mean, what an inspiration. To me, Rana Pratap Singh, what a beautiful inspiration. What Baba Saheb Ambedkar, his life history is touching. Tears come to my eyes when I read this. And so, apart from stories, books are also very useful for teachers to awaken them at this point of time, which is important. I share this book because I love this book. This has really made a lot of difference to me. And one sentence which I like from the book is, but there was no need to be ashamed of tears, for tears bore witness that a man had the greatest courage of courage, the courage to suffer. To suffer also needs courage. And that's what Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist, a Jew who was caught in the Holocaust and jailed by Hitler, goes through an experience, and he says that when pain is converted into meaning, you get into a state wherein you help others, and the meaning in life and purpose in life really changes the way you are. Well, Bhagavad Gita is my all-time favorite. Well, every day I pick up one page and I read something about it. And one sentence which really struck me is, if you can't avoid action, you might as well act. Which means what? Which means that as of now, a teacher, I'm a teacher too, or a leader, or anybody in the system has to act. He cannot be passive. I can't say that I can't teach online. I can't say that I can't use technology. I can't say that I'm not inspired without seeing children in front of me. I don't like initially. I did not like doing a class without seeing the people around me. But the point is, there's no choice. You have to act. One more book which I would like to share. You may have your own books. Please pick up your own books. Very important is the story of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, a bird which teaches other birds to fly. And once he has taught a group of birds to fly, he migrates from the group and goes somewhere else. And the sentence which really hit me is, we can lift ourselves out of ignorance. We can find ourselves as creatures of excellence and intelligence and skill. And this is something which is very important. Now, resilience and whatever you do with children can become intergenerational learning, which means what? Which means is this. Intergenerational trauma is something you need to understand. People who have faced trauma during the partition, during the world wars, actually transfer that trauma to different generations by sharing their painful stories. At the same time, when you share stories of resilience, when you in your classroom or in your sphere of influence, with wherever you are actually working, if you are able to touch people's hearts, if you're able to learn from people their stories of resilience, if you're able to catalyze an interaction with a bunch of people, your students or others, where people teach others what they have done. I'm not talking about baking cakes. I'm not talking about only cooking progress, but I'm talking about simple things which you have used to really get over the disaster. That will become intergenerational learning. All the children, my dear teachers who listen to you, will tell their grandchildren that 2019 we had a pandemic, and that was a COVID pandemic. And my teacher, Lakshmi, actually taught us this. I can still see Lakshmi's face, my dear grandson. I still can remember what she said. I can still remember the faces of my friends in the class who shared beautiful things. And the way we used those things, we really survived the entire disaster. And that is what I would like to share with you, my grandson. So resilience and all those things which you do, which is phenomenal, can become intergenerational learning. When I say don't look for the most phenomenal things, simple thing which you do is actually phenomenal. And phenomenal is a word which is an interpretation by the world around. The point is, keep doing simple things, and things become all right. My dear friends, I would like to remind you at this point of time, mind is not made of iron and steel. It is made of neurons. And always see to it that you nourish it. So there have been many crucibles across time. Communal riots has been one area of my experience. 6 months at Anand Kheda with a lot of my friends. Fatima was one of them, and so many others. And what I learned was, after the riot, when people came back, people needed those who had skills. They needed cycle repair karne wala, they needed electrician, they need others. So I found that this was the glue by which things can normalize between communities. And then after the riots, I had the fortune to work with Asgaril engineer and Ram Punyani, who had different ideologies. And when we visited different parts of the country to find ways how we can prevent communal riots, we came up with a mental health module for preventing communal riots. I still remember in a small village where where volunteers of different NGOs came together. At that time, they did not, they could not stay with each other in the same building. They had to be put in different buildings. And one Adivasi put his hand up and said, can we use the Ramayana to bring people together? I said, use anything to bring people together. There should not be a hate weapon to bring people together. I still remember this young lady who said, I lost my brother in the riot and I am helping people of my own community, but I can't stand the people of the other community. I said, you have awakened. But till the time you find peace inside you, you will not be able to help the larger community, but you have made a great beginning. And from Ram Punyani and Asghar Engineer, I learned a lot. And what we learned is to bring about actual peace in a community, there are several important. One of the most important thing, apart from the others, is that equal response to violence, any form of violence. You cannot be saying that this is bad, but this I will ignore. That is bad, and this I will ignore. Each one of us, as leaders, teachers, principals, and others, should be at the same on the same page when you actually talk against any form of violence. Partition also caused a lot of pain, and I really have interacted with a lot of Sindhis and Punjabis from Sakkar, from Lahore. I had the fortune to go to Pakistan once as a psychiatrist, and I've seen both sides of the border. And what I've learned from Sindhis, let me give you a metaphor. 40 years ago, when I used to travel to school in a train, I would find a Sindhi selling pens. And as a child, I would find Sindhis coming from Ulhasnagar and selling cut piece blouse pieces. And I would see all the mothers in my building gathering around him. But after 15 years, we did not see any Sindhi selling pens or or being a fairy wala. They moved to a different level of development only because they worked hard across time. And if you have to learn about resilience, if you're fortunate to meet elderly people who have faced partition, you will learn a lot from those who do not have bitterness about the partition, but those who can share good stories. And these stories of resilience can help us also during the pandemic, Holocaust, of course, and others. My dear friends, so what have we learned through research and through experience? A job of a teacher or a leader is to promote reconnection when the world is getting disconnected. And that is so important, which means, my dear children, go and play with your friends in the building as much as you can. Be connected to your cousins. I know your parents don't talk to each other. Your father would not talk to his brother. Your mother may not talk to his brother, to her brother, because of other property issues. But tum nafrat ke waris mat bano. And what is very important is when society, when people get reconnected, mental health is good, resilience is better, and the ability to fight any pandemic is much better. Connectedness is also a research finding. Across this last 2 years, a lot of research has come up which said social connectedness is important for building resilience. Community connectivity, extremely important, whichever community you belong to. Your festivals, your gods, very very important. I just met a Banjara, and I asked him, what do you do when you say hello to somebody? And he said, we do hello Sevalal. And I think it was so beautiful. When I meet Kohli, I say hello how is the Khandoba and Ekavira, very important for community continuity, and also to be connected with the larger whole, and the broader communities. And so this five sentence, 5 words are based on whatever we have learned from research across the world and from our experiences in disasters. Apart from community continuity, giving is living. All the young boys in my area and other areas who are working for Mask Up India, and they have been trained to do Mask Up India. They fold their hands in front of elders who don't wear masks. They tell them, please, master, we want you alive, we want your family alive, we want your parents alive. And these young boys and girls have been doing extremely good. And what they have learned, they're going to transfer this across generation. I still remember in the 93 riots, a lot of young boys and girls were asking me, I want talwar. Tell us where to get a gun. I said, shut up. We are not getting rice and wheat across days because a lot of shops are closed because of the curfew, can you actually go house to house and pick up one fistful of rice and wheat? So converting the energy of the youth, and so that may not be part of your curriculum, but 50% of your time should be actually used in building resilience, building connectedness, reconnecting the society, and building community continuity. And for the principals, let us not be in the safe space of my own group. I'm close because we are all part of MRA. I'm close because we're part of that principles group. I would say migrate. It was Gandhiji who went across the country twice on the advice of Gopal Krishna Gopal to understand India. So do not be in your own support groups. Migrate would be in your area. Most of you are from privileged schools. In your area, go to all the small schools. The schools where poor children come. Remember, I told you 1 out of 4 people who end their lives by suicide are daily wage laborers. These schools may not approach you because, as Amartya Sen said in his research on famine in Bengal, people die in famine because they do not have the skills to access help. The poor schools don't have the skills to access help. They may be led by a great leader. I'm not undermining the, the actual abilities of principals there, but it's very important for all of you here to walk around your area and travel the way Gandhiji traveled across country to understand. And if a great principal travels in his own zone across all the poor schools, sits down with the principal without any invitation. I've come to have tea in your school. Can we sit and talk? And if we do that, remember, there will be a revolution, and you will be holding the pole to actually pole vault across, and that is something which is very important. My dear friends, there's a problem with empathy also in the disaster. There's apathy and antipathy also, and I'll give you examples. Sadness is a positive emotion. Depression is a negative state. Empathy के लिए थोड़ी उदासीनता की आवश्यकता है. Empathy के लिए थोड़ी इक्वानिमिटी की आवश्यकता है. Empathy के लिए emotional regulation की आवश्यकता है. And let me tell you this 3 triad. My dear friends, I'll share a story. I might cross my limit by 10 minutes, but I think we started late, and I'm sure Jaya will not mind at all. In any pandemic or a disaster, there is apathy, empathy, and antipathy. Empathy is something you all know. I'll tell you what apathy is. Apathy is you hear a news of somebody's death, and that causes a lot of fear. And when it causes a lot of fear, the entire mind of you is covered by a layer which obstructs you from really empathizing with whoever passed away, which obstructs you from actually going and communicating to the person your grief. And because of the fear, you become silent, you become numb, and you become apathetic. Empathy is lost. And my dear friends, each one of us born is compassionate. Very few of us may discover it all the time in a lifetime. Each one of us who's born on this earth is creative, and very few of us may actually discover a creative for various reasons. What is antipathy? And this story is very, very, it has hit me hard, and this is not only one instinct. I have heard many other stories which are similar. A father wants to go to the hospital where his sister is admitted because of COVID. She had recovered from COVID and now she's in the ICU. She's off COVID. She can be visited and she can be seen. The doctor says, "I would want to talk to you, sir. Please come." And as he leaves the house, the 2 sons stop him and said, "No, Daddy, you cannot go. We actually are thinking about you. We want you to be safe. You cannot go, sir." And he said, "You cannot go, Daddy." He sits down and he's so upset. And the kids say, "We are concerned about you. We don't want you to die. We want you. I do not know what you want. And your sister can be taken care of by others." And as he sat down with those 2 kids, one boy, one girl, he asked the boy, "If your sister falls ill when you grow up, will you go and see him or not? If your brother falls ill, will you go and see him or not?" And they said, "I understand you, but I feel scared." So fear can also cause a lot of antipathy. And so in the disaster, in a big disaster, empathy can also be associated with apathy and antipathy, which means what? Which means in a smaller disaster, you see a lot of altruism, a lot of giving. But in a big disaster, you'll find people moving away from you. You also feel people getting very angry at somebody who is who is helpful to somebody else. So, which is also very important. Now, there's a lot of existential crisis. This should read existential, not external. When people are dying all around us, what is the meaning of life? Who am I? What is the purpose of life? And this existential crisis, Sthita Prajna, which remains only on one night when somebody dies, is a powerful tool for you to convert your entire activity as meaning in life. Remember, teachers, sixth pay commission salary, seventh pay commission salary, 10th pay commission salary cannot equate to all the sacrifices and all the good things you're doing to your children and your family. So, my dear friends, I always would like to see teachers who are exhausted and happy rather than teachers who are bored and tired. So when you get this question, remember the purpose of your life is hold the pole and vault across the height and use this disaster as a method to actually move the community across a different development level. My dear friends, as I talk to you guys and I slowly stop talking, I pay my obeisance to two great rishis, Patanjali and Gautam Buddha. And why I'm doing this? Because they gave us some of the most beautiful learnings for the entire world, and they gave it free of cost. Both of them are not philosophers, both of them are scientists. Patanjali gave us yoga, and Gautam Buddha gave us Vipassana or mindfulness. Vipassana is free all over the world, but mindfulness is not free all over the world. My dear friends, we still look down upon our inventions. We still look down upon what we have given to the world. And as Pfizer and Moderna refuse to give the basic methodology of making their vaccine because they believe in intellectual property rights, well, intellectual property rights, vale. West do not know that we have given them so many things free, and mankind, if you have to survive, you have to collaborate and cooperate. We can't talk about rights and patent all the time. We can't actually bind a skill, bind an idea with a patent and sell it. It will die. The idea will die. The idea will not come up. E is equal to mc squared did not come overnight to Einstein. It came to Einstein because he interacted with a lot of others. And when people interact with a lot of others, something comes up. And that also is because of the interaction of thousands of others across generations. And in India, Patanjali did not say, it's my yoga. He said, it's an experience from hundreds of sadhus before me. And so did Vatsan, and so did Gautam Buddha. So what is very important for us to really respect these two skills and see that we actually harness them and actually help people to move ahead. So my dear friends, when you manage loss, remember tears are liberating. As Viktor Frankl said, avoid people with long noses. ये कैसा हुआ? कौन से अस्पताल में एडमिट थे? हमारा भाई तो 15 दिन से वापस है, तुम्हारा भाई इतने 25 दिन में अस्पताल में क्यों है? Avoid clones of Sherlock Holmes who want to know every detail minutely, cross-checking you across time. Avoid them. And remember that families that cry together actually heal together. My dear friends, how did Mirabai lift 202 kgs of weight when she's only 49 kgs heavy? She must have continued her exercise. She must have really focused. She must have really been perseverant, persistent. And what a great lesson for us during the disaster. A 49-year-old lady, Mirabai Chanu, who had a birthday yesterday, picks up 202 kilos in a competition, which means anybody can do anything, which means even if we focus at this point of disaster, what you do is not for mankind, but the transformation you experience in this entire pandemic. When you think about pole vaulting yourself and lifting the entire community towards a different development level, it will be fantastic. My dear friends, as I stop, it's not apna time aayega, apna time aaya hai. And when I say apna time aaya hai, India is on the threshold of a great tomorrow. And you guys are the architects. And you have a lot of people where you have cross-directional communication, pluralistic communication, so that we learn from them and we also share. I mean, my dear friends, as I stop, remember, the K factor is one of the most important things which is necessary to raise your mental being to be effective, and that is the kindness factor. Never forget that. I have seen in many schools teachers who have been not talking to each other have been helping each other during the pandemic. Everything dissolved because there's one invisible virus which taught the entire human race kindness, compassion. It awakened the human race to tell them that you have forgotten all these things. Your intercontinental ballistic missiles have no meaning to me. And if you have started talking to those whom you could not stand, whom you hate, it means there's something happening inside you, and let this change remain for a long time. My dear friends, as I stop, remember the virus has taught us a lot of lessons. And one of the most important lesson is the virus is mutating for the worst and different avatars. Avatar is in Hindi, avatar is English. And so the human race needs to mutate for the best. So as I stop, I would like to say, hey teachers, this beautiful picture of Savita Punia, who stopped so many penalty corners in the match against Australia, is a metaphor masking and the exuberance and enthusiasm showed by the women's cricket team also inspires me. I'm sure it inspires you. And I would say then, hey teachers, display your different avatars, learn something from the virus, and see to it that we actually jump across with the pole to lift the entire community to a different development level. With this, I thank Jaya Parikh, Ram Ratan Vidya Mandir, and all the trustees, and also the entire group of Aadharshila for inviting me for this talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. This 1 hour has given us a lot to think about. Totally agree with you that there is a lot of positive that comes out of these challenges. Thank you for highlighting those for us. I'm also thankful to all the participants, especially Mr. Willie Broad, who has been highlighting what you have said with his own inputs. Thank you. Our friends have got some questions. We have got one question here. And I would like to, first of all, thank you for connecting this wisdom across the different spans of life and the different people who come from different backgrounds, whether it's a sports person, it's a politician, it's a religious leader, spiritual leader. I think you have left no example which could bring it into us that the challenges come with new learnings. Yes, Viktor Frankls are born during Holocaust. And as you talked about the mutation and the speed with which this virus is mutating, I'm sure the teachers have also mutated, and the crisis has been used as a pole vault, and this is not going to stop here. We need your blessings, we need your regular guidance, and we all together as teachers are going to do it. And I, as principal, definitely promise to you, what you said about moving together, reaching out to schools who might not reach out to me, reach out to us. I'll surely take more guidance if needed, and we'll see to it that this is done from our school. I would like to pose this question to you, or maybe I can request our Vice Principal, Dr. Smita Gandhi. It's her question. Why don't you unmute yourself and please ask?
Yes, namaste ma'am, namaste sir. Thank you for this wonderful session. It was definitely very enlightening and highly motivating and enriching kind of. My question is that these days parents have started approaching, and I have also experienced that students are not able to focus because they feel that they have lost the connect what they used to feel, because they are missing their classroom, they are missing their classmates, they are missing their interaction with the teachers. So the parents have started calling that how to help these children, how to help our child. And when I speak to the children, I can see that anguish, that pain in them when they talk, that they don't like these online classes, they want to come to school. Now this is something which is not in our hands also, unfortunately. How to guide the students, how to motivate the students to be, like I tell them that this is the situation which is out of our control. So let us find out the best thing and let us be happy with whatever we have, because at least you're getting this thing. There are many who are not getting education at all. They are devoid of education and everything. But still, somewhere the children say that, ma'am, it's easy to say because you're not in our shoes, you will not understand what we are going through. How to help the students? How to guide them?
Yeah, I think thank you for the question, ma'am. Let me give the answers at different levels. Number one, let me give simple things for children at school. They need to understand, parents should be told that if your house is perfect, your child will be sad and depressed. If things break in the house because they're playing box cricket, because they're running around, they're laughing, they're shouting, the secretary of the building is saying, तुम्हारे घर से बहुत आवाज आ रही है, your children will be normal. Number two, if children play in water, if the secretary of the building is kind enough to give enough water for children play, have a longer bath and a longer shower, they remain much calmer. I'm telling you this, water, we were all born with water around us when we were in villages. Now we don't have that water. Children jumping into our ponds in my place, in my village, in Nandalke, is so common. When I used to go to Jharkhand, tribal schools, they are very calm because they're always with nature. So that is one simple thing. They need to move, they need to laugh, they need to tickle their mothers, they need to tickle their fathers, and the fathers need to tickle the mothers, and the mothers need to tickle the fathers, and they need to be childlike. If the father and the mother are childlike, children will be childlike. That's also a very important intervention. Fourth thing is, याद रखो भाई, अच्छे मार्क्स नहीं आएंगे तो कौनो दिक्कत नहीं, एक साल पढ़ाई नहीं करेंगे तो कौनो दिक्कत नहीं. Willie Broad looks very upset and angry at this. कुछ होने वाला नहीं. मुझे जया बेन ने मेरे 10th के मार्क्स पूछकर मुझे इनवाइट नहीं किया है. ना तो आपके शादी में जब आप अंगूठी डालते हो पति या पत्नी के हाथ में तो नहीं पूछा तेरा 10वीं का मार्क दिखा पहला. So let them understand that this is a time to really build resilience in the family, in the schools, and in the community. And if that you can put in the parents, things will change. The third thing, which is also very important, when I was in Afghanistan, I had gone to Afghanistan to train the medical doctors on PTSD, and I'd gone much before all these things were happening. The Russians had left, and I saw schools. 14 years there was no education in Afghanistan. 14 years, huh? And I saw empowered people building a small tent, calling children and teaching them whatever they knew. I mean, not teaching them science or geography. So I would say principals and teachers, जहां जहां आप रहते हो ना, हफ्ते में एक बार बच्चों को इकट्ठा करो, अलग अलग स्कूल के, पैसा नहीं मिलेगा बस. और माँ कसम बोलता हूँ, बैठ के गाना गाओ, थोड़ा कुछ सिखाओ, थोड़ा माउंट एवरेस्ट का हाइट 8,848 मीटर्स बताओ, अरुणिमा सिन्हा की कहानी सुनाओ, पर बच्चों को इकट्ठा करो in a safe model. But what is stopping this is the joy hesitancy, and that I think is very, very important. The fourth thing which is very important is that children need movement, children need touch, children need laughter, children need running. I met a sports kid, 15-year-old, who actually wanted to run away from the house and harm himself. You know why? Because he was at home. People were asking, तुमने अभी कितना मिला medal, तुमको क्या होने वाला है कुछ? And he said, कुछ नहीं, medal नहीं है. He used to sit in the house for a long time. He had some injuries in the spine, so he could not do exercise, and he could do nothing. And he was from a place known as Vasai. And I told him, Baba, मरने का नहीं, फादर को लेके, तुम्हारे हरियाली बहुत है, तुम्हारे पानी बहुत है, जाके पानी में गिरो, हरियाली में खेलो. My dear parents, tell the parents to see to it that the kids play in mud and get muddy. मिट्टी से खेलो यार, मिट्टी से नहीं खेलो तो पृथ्वी का सुगंध नहीं आएगा. So these small things. Apart from that, all teachers, I would say, अपने बिल्डिंग में कुछ जगह बगैर कुछ बच्चों को बोलोगे तुम कहानी सुनाएंगे, ऐसे करके आगे करो. और मैंने उद्धव ठाकरे को खत लिखा कि we need to start schools in an experimental manner, 2 hours a day for 5th standard, and they can be spread across the school. 2 hours a day for the 6th standard, and probably twice a day, twice a week school, and with all safety precautions, and that should be done. But you know what? People are playing safe because if something happens, the opposition will jump at them. So everybody, in a disaster, you need to be together. But that's not happening. So I am told, and by very, very, very reliable sources, that the trains are going to start on the 15th, which is announced. But most probably schools will also start very soon, though a lot of doctors are against this because everybody is scared of the third pandemic. So there's a move by Uddhav Thackeray and the state that citizenship, responsibility, and slowly starting school. So I agree with you, ma'am. We don't have all the answers, Smita-ji, but in your own domain, innovate. And that I think is very important. Let's find solutions, little solutions for big problems. And when they come back, let them get acclimatized to your school. Jata tum test mat do kya? Test दो झटाझट test. अरे बाबा, one school has been so tough, IGCSE school, that one camera gone, माँ बाप का फोन, तुम्हारा बच्चा नहीं है. अरे क्या लगा के रखे हो यार, पठान हो क्या, तालिबान है क्या, ये बंद करो ये बकवास. I would request. So this I don't blame the school, because schools are also very anxious. IGCSE say they have to go to US, Yale, etc. But ये भी सिखाओ ना यार. When USA is educated in the mind, they have the highest stockpile of nuclear weapons. So the mind is educated and the soul is illiterate. तो सब बाजू सिखाओ प्लीज. एंड इफ प्रिंसिपल्स भ्रमण करेंगे और जगह का, सिर्फ अपने ही ग्रुप में नहीं बैठेंगे, तो देखिएगा एंजाइटी ऑफ प्रिंसिपल्स विल गो डाउन, एंड आई थिंक मेंटल विल इंप्रूव. बट आई एम श्योर स्मिता जी, आई डोंट हैव ऑल द आंसर्स.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, but thank you
But
so
sir,
much.
I think you have given us the ability to find our answers in the best possible manner. I agree with you. There are no perfect answers and no perfect method. Thank you for such an invigorating question, Dr. Smita. So, I would like to let you know that some of the things we have actually been following. I'm not talking about just my school, but the principals, teachers, the school owners like Mr. Willie Broad here with us, and so many others that I know of, that, a lot has worked when it came to trusting children. It worked better when you trust children, when you worked your teachers, when you worked your entire community. If you start looking into nitty-gritties and expecting them to show this, prove this, show an evidence, and keep the cameras on, it's just an example. Or why you were not present on time, why you didn't do this. I mean, just be compassionate, like you said. And it's like ripples of kindness and compassion. Once we are compassionate, it reaches out to people working with us, it reaches down to the students finally. So it's okay, judge less. And even if the child is fooling you one day and you have ignored it, the child knows internally that probably there is a chance my teacher knew, but she still chose to ignore it. She somewhere believes that, I might not do it, or she believes it's not such a big deal. Why don't I try to become better? So I think it really works better when we go by trust and compassion. And these are not actually luxuries, these are necessities. We as teachers should become ambassadors for compassion. Sir, thank you so much. You have given us a lot of insights. You have re-energized us and empowered us to deal with the challenges and emerge out with fresh learnings. Thank you so much. I thank each and every participant, everyone who has contributed to this talk by sharing their thoughts, or simply by sharing the same vibes we all feel here, despite of this virtual platform. We could feel the synergy, and that's what Dr. Shetty has been talking about, the connectedness. We could see it even through the screen, and I thank each one of you for that. Thanks to all my friends at Ramratna International School and across the country and the world who are together, who are connected in this crisis. We will emerge victorious. We are already on the way. Let's keep mutating ourselves. Thank you so much. Pranam to you, sir, and God bless each one. Thanks to all of you for being here. Ms. Aarti Gandhi, Director, Nalanda Foundation, I can see you on the screen. Thank you. Vijay ma'am, once again, thank you. All our friends, Mr. Willie Broad.
Thank you, Jaya,
Thank
for
you.
organizing this. Thank you.
Rahul ji, thank you so much.
As you got.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jaya and Dr. Shetty. Every time it's a wonderful experience to listen to Dr. Shetty. Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking out time during your family holiday, Vijay ma'am.